Hello there. Well, what's happened to turn Brexiteer hardman SteveBaker into the equivalent of a pro-EU soft toy? Now, if you haven't already done so, please do subscribe and then like and comment below. First, we had Chris Heaton-Harris, the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, making friendly noises about how the Northern Ireland Protocol negotiations were going so swimmingly well, despite it being obvious that the protocol would continue to be operated in a way that maintains ECJ jurisdiction over Northern Ireland and keeps the trade barrier within the UK between Great Britain and Northern Ireland down the Irish Sea. A protocol that will therefore still be operated in a manner that flies in the face of the Belfast Agreement. And now we have that staunch Brexiteer and former chairman of the Tory Eurosceptic European Research Group, the ERG, SteveBaker, who is now the Minister of State for Northern Ireland, coming out and apologising to both the EU and the Republic of Ireland over his previous hard stance on Brexit. I was one who perhaps acted with the most ferocious determination to get the UK out of the EU. I think we have to bring some humility to the situation, said Baker. And it's with humility that I want to accept and acknowledge that I and others did not always behave in a way which encouraged Ireland and the European Union to trust us, to accept that they have legitimate interests that we're willing to respect, because they do and we are willing to respect them. And I am sorry about that, because relations with Ireland are not where they should be, and we will need to work extremely hard to improve them, and I know that we are doing so. That screeching U-turn by Baker is inexplicable to me. The UK did the most humiliating thing that a country can do, cede control of part of the country and put up internal trade barriers that separates the people of the UK from each other in order to placate the European Union. Don't tell me that the EU has higher legitimate interests than the UK regaining control of its own sovereignty and destiny. How can the EU pushing rules that stop businesses selling trees into Northern Ireland, or to move pets into Northern Ireland, or foodstuffs? That is intolerable. The EU has even previously demanded that parcels sent through the post from Great Britain into Northern Ireland are stopped and checked. No, we have nothing to apologise for, working towards rectifying that Tory-driven mess of a protocol. And when you get Theresa May's former Chief of Staff, now Lord Gavin Barwell, calling this apology long overdue but no less welcome for that, you know something is wrong. Where is the apology from the EU and Dublin for actively trying to tear Northern Ireland away from the United Kingdom? There will be no apology, because they believe that the UK delivering Northern Ireland to Dublin and Brussels in full is the true price of Brexit. And now we have Heaton-Smith and Baker acting more like Lib Dem politicians than members of the Conservative and Unionist Party. Are they going to change the title of their party by dropping the word Unionist from it during this conference? The Irish Taoiseach, Michael Martin, has said that the message from the UK was now a desire for genuine engagement and a wish to get this issue resolved. But the EU will never want this issue truly resolved. For them, it's always going to be a matter of hiving Northern Ireland away from the UK, and everything they do will have that one aim in mind. Now, another aspect to this is that the House of Lords is due to get through the second reading of the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill next Tuesday. And this sort of language from the number 1 and number 2 in the Northern Ireland office will send them the message that maybe Liz Truss is no longer as hardcore about ripping through the protocol as previously thought. That will give our massively pro-EU lords even more incentive to take a sledgehammer to that particular bill. The government has already handbraked a screeching U-turn by going back on plans to scrap the top 45% income tax rate. Are we now going to see a softening of Brexit where Northern Ireland is concerned? Now, Baker did also say that the protocol bill was more of a wish list than a bottom line, saying, "I really don't want to overplay the bill. We know what we want, we've written it down, and anyone can see what we'd like to achieve." But he also said that, "I'm not going to talk about preconditions, I'm not going to talk about red lines, I'm not going to talk about compromises. We need to be very, very practical, move this conversation forward and come up with a deal that works for everyone." Is ECJ jurisdiction practical and not a red line? Is having businesses from the rest of the UK effectively barred from selling into Northern Ireland practical or a red line issue? One of Truss's official spokespersons said that Baker speaks for the government and that the PM was looking for a negotiated agreement. Sounds like someone in the Joe Biden administration has been making threatening phone calls to me. At least Jacob Rees-Mogg has come out robustly and said that we need to be able to trade as a single United Kingdom. But SteveBaker suddenly changing from hardman to marshmallow does not fill me with any confidence about the future of Northern Ireland in the UK. Now, like many of the British public, Tory MP Nadine Dorries has had enough of her own government. But she has gone one step further and wants a general election. Clearly she is feeling very unsatisfied with the Truss administration. But another general election? What would Brenda from Bristol say this time? Now, according to a recent poll on GB News, 50% of those asked said that if there was an election tomorrow, they would vote Labour, with only 20% saying they would vote Conservative. And that's coming from GB News viewers who are not what I would call a left-wing demographic. So a general election tomorrow would almost certainly result in a Labour majority. Now, those disaffected Tories know that Labour would start signing us back into the single market and trash the economy, but they would still vote to hurt themselves just to give the Tories a kicking. Not because they suddenly thought that Starmer and his left-wing policies were suddenly their flavour of the month. I always shake my head at that almost knee-jerk response by many in the electorate. Surely a far better thing to do would be to vote for any right-of-centre candidate on your ballot paper. Why do people think that if blue wrecks it, then red will mend it, and when red wrecks it, then blue will mend it? All we actually achieve is a slow but steady and permanent decline. But in this two-party state, it's so hard to convince most people to take a punt on anything other than red or blue.